Now, Prometheus is the patron saint of philosophers, as Marx said. And if you seriously worship Athena, as I do, then you have to be on the side of Prometheus. We have to set him free. And, of course, Shelley, who was way ahead of the game, he wrote a whole drama about Prometheus Unbound, which I once saw enacted at Steiner House in London on the stage. I think they did excerpts, but you know, it's a masterpiece, and it represents this setting free of the higher spirit of us, humanity, Homo sapiens, coming back, and sort of shaking off the tyranny of the the fake God in the name of the authentic God, or gods inspired by the muses. And that's also what this struggle is to prevent Brexit, is to activate and harness that spiritual imagination that all these great thinkers have spoken about. And Shakespeare's probably the doyen of them all, the Bard of Britain. I mean, I'm a Shakespearean scholar and lover, and I used to act in Shakespeare. I know his work intimately. He's another great Europhile. You know, the true spirits of the English intellectual, poetic genius of Britain is 100% against this nonsense of Brexit. It's a cooked up nightmare delivered by some semi-educated right-wing occultists who can't tell their, one end of their Plato from whatever, their battle axe, So look, I'm going to stop there. This is just me checking in and saying what an amazing conference we had in the Pyrenees, and you can watch the videos that we filmed there. They were amazing. I want to close with a quote from my dear Plato, who in his book The Statesman, you see what Plato did, which is so extraordinary, is he lived at that time when he inherited all the ancient wisdom from Bronze Age Greece, from the mystery schools. He was initiated at Eleusis, and he was an inheritor of the oral wisdom of Greece, going right back to the Bronze Age, going right back to what Maria Gimbutas calls Old Europe, Old European civilization, which goes from the same source as the Celts of Europe, because the Celtic tribes of Switzerland, Austria, and the North Balkans were banging up against the Greeks. They were trading, they were exchanging. Celts and Druids and Greeks and philosophers were all going and sitting at each other's feet. We know that Abaris went and sat with Pythagoras, and that must just be one name that we know among thousands. So Plato imbibed all that oral genius, and then also the new writing genius that was come with the Greek Enlightenment, with the pre-Socratics, with Parmenides and other great philosophers beginning to think rationally, Herodotus and so on. And Plato wrote in his dialogues, he was that moment at which the oral wisdom then gets put into written form. So thank God we've got it, There must have been hundreds of Platos active in Ireland and Britain at the time that didn't write their memoirs. They didn't, it's tragic. but they passed it on orally. And the Druid tradition is also an oral tradition, which is still living. I've been fortunate to meet many senior Druids who are now, some of them are dead and gone, sadly. It comes from the same bubbling stream, as St. Thomas put it. The source of gnosis is one and universal. Anyway, Plato tried to take all that and then share it with for the benefit of society. That's what I call left-wing esotericism. You find the wisdom, but then you don't just sit up on the mountain and narcissize, No, you go into the marketplace like Socrates and you share it with the masses. And yes, they may kill you, crucify you, whatever, but if you get away with it for a few years, then that's great. And Plato was in the Republic. He talks about having had the vision of the one, the unity, then you go into the marketplace, you share it. And in his dialogue, The Statesman, which I'm going to end by quoting, you have to find the formula whereby the body politic, the polity of society as a whole can be best led and governed by a statesman or woman who is like an artist. And he calls that person a weaver together, a kingly weaver. It's a great metaphor, because you're taking all the strands of society, all the complexity, and you're trying to create a harmony. And that's the job and the duty of a true statesperson. Now, what we need are every single person in the UK has to rise up to this crisis. We all have to become kingly weavers, or statesmen and women, and we have to reject this fanatical right-wing elite, kind of coup that's been happening. It's a cabal, and that will only happen if all of us become wise enough, quickly enough, to challenge it and do so at the ballot box, do so by sharing on social media, by talking, by communicating. I'm giving an oral sharing here. Well, pass it on, get people to listen. If everyone that listens to this gets it, shares it with 10 friends, enough people will then become enlightened enough to just see off this nightmare. This is like a nightmare we have to waken from. And in the name of Shelley and Byron and Plato, I appeal to our universal enlightenment potential that we should do so. Okay, this is what Plato says right at the end of the dialogue. Socrates has been talking to this mysterious person, this stranger he's called. And the stranger sums up. He says the following: "Now, we have reached the appointed end of the weaving of the web of state. It is fashioned by the statesman's weaving. The strands run true. And these strands are the gentle and the brave. Here, these strands are woven together into a unified character. For this unity is one where the kingly art draws the life of both types into a true fellowship by mutual concord and by ties of friendship. It is the finest and best of all fabrics. It enfolds all who dwell in the city, bond or free, in its firm contexture. Its kingly weaver maintains his control and oversight over it, and it lacks nothing that makes for happiness, so far as happiness is obtainable in a human community."